It is official. A U.S.-mediated ceasefire agreement took effect at 4 a.m. this morning, and as of this hour, it appears to be holding. The deal calls for Hezbollah to be out of South Lebanon and has ended Hezbollah's commitment to continue firing at Israel until the end of the war in Gaza. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
This ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon went into effect at 4 a.m. Israel time. Hezbollah began firing at Israel on October 8th of last year, and the cross-border war has been ongoing, with the Lebanese terrorists vowing to continue the fight until the end of the war in Gaza in support of Hamas. That's now over, or at least paused. More than 8,000 projectiles were fired at Israel, causing deaths, injuries, and heavy damages. IDF troops remain in South Lebanon for now. IDF airstrikes and incoming rocket and UAV fire from Hezbollah have halted. For now, the ceasefire is being observed. Within hours of the start of the ceasefire, thousands of Lebanese began heading back to their homes near the Israeli border in the south. The Lebanese army is reportedly warning them not to go to the front line of South Lebanese villages where IDF troops remain. Up until the start of the ceasefire, the IDF had been pounding Hezbollah targets in central Beirut, as well as the Hezbollah stronghold in the Dakhia area. Some 180 targets were struck over a 24-hour period. Some of the final targets hit were the Hezbollah financial management systems in Beirut, Sidon, Tyre, and the Bekaa. IDF ground troops had reached further north than at any time since the start of the ground incursion in September. IDF troops reached and crossed the Litani River for the first time yesterday, entering new Hezbollah strongholds not yet reached by troops. A terrorist compound was destroyed and weapons captured. Troops came under fire in one ceasefire violation inside South Lebanon when Hezbollah terrorists approached the village of Kafr Kila overlooking Metula. The army fired warning shots. The IDF is required to withdraw from South Lebanon in the ceasefire agreement. They will be replaced by the Lebanese army, tasked with preventing the Hezbollah forces from returning to the area.
On October 8th, Hezbollah launched an attack against Israel from Lebanon. Since that time, for over a year, Israelis have endured daily missile attacks from Hezbollah. Now, after months of negotiations, Israel and Lebanon have agreed to the 60-day ceasefire. But just what does the agreement entail? All the details in the following report. U.S. President Joe Biden officially announced Tuesday evening that Israel and Lebanon had accepted a ceasefire agreement brokered by the United States and France.
Effective at 4 a.m. tomorrow local time, the fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end. Will end. This is designed to be a permanent cessation of hostilities. What is left of Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations will not be allowed, I emphasize, will not be allowed to threaten the security of Israel again.
The ceasefire, months in the making, passed in the Israeli cabinet by a vote of 10-1. It includes an immediate cessation of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah and the gradual withdrawal of Israeli troops from southern Lebanon within 60 days. Both sides agreed to recognize Resolution 1701 of the UN Security Council, which calls to push Hezbollah back to behind the Litani River. The Lebanese army will in turn deploy some 5,000 troops to southern Lebanon and will be the only armed force allowed in the area, while all Hezbollah weapons facilities will be dismantled. An international committee, including in the United States, will oversee and enforce these commitments along with UNIFIL. Though most importantly, the agreement allows Israel to maintain the right to respond militarily to any breach of the terms by Hezbollah.
If Hezbollah or anyone else breaks the deal and poses a direct threat to Israel, then Israel retains the right to self-defense, consistent with international law, just like any country, when facing a terrorist group pledged to that country's destruction.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a televised address to the Israeli public on Tuesday evening, emphasized this point and said the length of the ceasefire will depend on what happens in Lebanon.
אם חיזבאללה יפר את ההסכם וינסה להתחמש, אנחנו נתקוף. אם הוא ינסה לחדש תשתיות טרור בסמוך לגבול, אנחנו נתקוף. אם הוא ישגר רקטה, אם הוא יחפור מנהרה, אם הוא יכניס משאית עם טילים, אנחנו נתקוף.
The prime minister also addressed the timing of the ceasefire and said there were three main reasons for Israel's agreement. The first is to focus on the Iranian threat, on which he said he would not expand. The second is to give the IDF a breather and replenish weapons stocks, which Netanyahu said is no secret have been delayed. And the third reason is to separate the fronts and isolate Hamas in Gaza.
אמרתי פעמים רבות, הסכם טוב זה הסכם שאוכפים אותו, ואנחנו נאכוף אותו.
Hezbollah's decision to give up its fight as part of the so-called Axis of Resistance was a massive defeat for the Lebanese terror group. While still firing from a distance, they've effectively withdrawn from the border and given up their pledge to stand with Hamas in Gaza. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz explains.
Hezbollah effectively surrendered on its pledge to stand with Hamas after more than 13 months of cross-border exchanges beginning just after the October 7, 2023 Hamas massacre of Israelis. The war with Israel took an immense toll on the terror group's leadership, officers, fighters, and infrastructure. While still able to fire heavy rocket barrages toward Israel up until the ceasefire, the group lost its leader Hassan Nasrallah, his potential successor, as well as its chief of staff and a range of top operational officers. The pager attack left many hundreds of its members dead or wounded. Much of the Hezbollah center in the Dahia neighborhood of Beirut lies in ruins. Other Hezbollah targets in central Beirut were not spared. The front lines of Hezbollah on the border were overrun by IDF troops that reached as far as the Litani. Hezbollah fighters were killed and enemy infrastructure built inside Lebanese villages destroyed. Hezbollah was not fully defeated, but was left extremely damaged and in retreat.
And joining us now with more on the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon is Ksenia Svetlova, a senior non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council, a former member of the Israeli Knesset, and an expert on Middle East affairs. Thank you for joining us. So we now know the details, the terms of the ceasefire agreement. Is this, in your opinion, a good deal for Israel? I mean, was Israel able to get everything that it wanted as a part of this deal?
Well, I'm absolutely sure that Israel did not get everything that it wanted because initially I think that there was absolutely no question that Israel needs a change of security reality in Lebanon. And while Hezbollah indeed suffered a very hard blow and it's weakened and it lost its leaders and so on, it is still the most powerful militia in the country, despite everything that it suffered. It's still a part of Lebanese politics, and it's still a power that is not about to dissolve, to disseminate, to withdraw from Lebanon. It is an integral part of Lebanese society, politics, and military power.
Mm-hmm. Because, you know, on paper, it does sound like a good deal for Israel, but a lot of the terms are very similar to those of the previous agreement in 2006. And we now know that the United Nations, UNIFIL, did absolutely nothing and turned a blind eye and even enabled Hezbollah. We know that the Lebanese army did not uphold its end of the agreement. So how can we be certain it will work this time around?
Well, it really remains to be seen. I'm personally very doubtful that a weak Lebanese army that just a few months ago, when Lebanon was on the brink of a war and destruction, and had any kind of power, it could indeed prevent the deterioration. It could prevent, or at least try to prevent, from Hezbollah from continuing provoking Israel and sacrificing the lives of many innocent Lebanese on the way. So it did nothing, and it still does nothing today. I mean, that the preparations for the ceasefire, they were ongoing, and I think that the temporary Lebanese government, they don't even have a permanent government, and there is no president, and we don't know when one will be elected and who this person will be. Some who serves still the Hezbollah needs or somebody else. So in any case, we see that today Lebanon encourages its citizens to go south and to move back into the houses and so on. there is no supervision. I mean, the only supervision that there is from the IDF in areas that are still controlled by the IDF. But you see absolutely zero attempt on the behalf of UNIFIL on the first day of the ceasefire to show any kind of seriousness and a different approach in, of course, in comparison to what happened before. And again, if Lebanese army was weak 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, can it turn into a powerful and mighty army that is able to fight Hezbollah, the most powerful militia in the Middle East?
I mean, that's the real question. Yeah, that's the real question. And I also want to ask, is the Lebanese army sympathetic to Hezbollah? I mean, is there even a real distinction?
Yeah, there is a distinction, of course. And you cannot say that overall that the whole of Lebanese army supports Hezbollah, but there are definitely elements in it that support Hezbollah. Because again, I have to remind everyone, Hezbollah is a part and parcel of Lebanese society. Yes, they ideologically belong to the Iranian axis of evil. They call it axis of resistance. We, of course, call them the axis of evil group. But at the end of the day, we are talking about Lebanese from the south, from the most poor segment of Lebanese society. Some of them go to Hezbollah and others go to Lebanese army. So you tell me, what kind of difference is there and how big it is. So again, I do not say that there is no hope for Lebanon and for Hezbollah's army, but for now we are talking about 60 days. This ceasefire, it's limited. It will last for 60 days. And there, then we will see whether it will continue and under what circumstances and so on. So in these 60 days, I'm very doubtful that anything in Lebanon, and I hear it also from my Lebanese friends and experts, who say that they really do not understand the Israeli decision and that they believe that there is hardly anybody in Lebanon, certainly not the Lebanese army, not the UNIFIL, and no French element like France or USA, that can effectively stop from Hezbollah men to go back to their villages, and slowly, it will not happen in a day, but rebuild their capabilities.
All right, well, let's hope that this ceasefire will hold and that Israel's northern residents can finally return home safely. Ksenia Svetlova, thank you so much for your analysis today. And following the news of a ceasefire in the north, the Israeli population seems divided as to whether this is the right or wrong decision. ILTV's Ariel Elchiani is in Tel Aviv with more.
On October 8, 2023, Hezbollah began firing rockets into Israel, and now, after nearly 14 months of ongoing fighting between Israel and Hezbollah and over 60,000 residents of northern Israel displaced, a ceasefire has finally come into effect. And whilst this is a sigh of relief and a big sign of hope, this also brings about a lot of uncertainty. It raises the questions, will the ceasefire even last? And is this the right decision for Israel, its security and its future? This morning, a long-awaited ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah came into effect, marking a sudden halt to the waves of rocket fire that have gripped the country for months. From the northern border to Tel Aviv, people are cautiously emerging from shelters, hopeful but wary of what lies ahead. Communities along the northern border, like Metula, have faced relentless attacks since early October. Hezbollah's rockets, more than 16,000 launched, have destroyed homes and displaced over 60,000 Israelis. Now, they wait to see if this uneasy calm holds or if they'll be forced back into safe rooms. In Tel Aviv, where occasional rockets from the north added to fears during the conflict, there's a collective breath of relief, but also uncertainty.
For me, an Israeli, I have to say that people are dying. It doesn't matter if you're an Israeli or Lebanon citizen. All of us and all human beings in this world are supposed to be against war.
While Israel's airstrikes have displaced nearly 1 million people in Lebanon, Hezbollah was still firing into Israel up until the ceasefire. Opinion is divided over whether even more military pressure could have continued to degrade Hezbollah assets further. Others say diplomacy must now take the lead.
I think it was a good idea. The northern communities have to go home, and this allows them to get home. And it's been a really tough time, both economically and socially, having them, not in the north. And so I think it's really important to find an agreement to get them home, even if it doesn't allow Israel to do that last 10 or 20% of the war.
These are days of trial. Will the quiet hold or just a pause in the action?
And joining us now is Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves Gidi Harari, a former member of the intelligence community, an associate lecturer at the Alma Center, and a resident of northern Israel. Gidi, thank you for joining us today.
Welcome, thank you.
So as a northern resident, what is the feeling like today after over a year of daily missile attacks?
The best feeling is that this morning I woke up to a silent day, which didn't happen the last 14 months. So it's very significant. But talking seriously, I think this agreement is very important in order for us, not only the population of the north, but also the state of Israel, to give us the opportunity to build again the communities in the Galil that were evacuated, and not only those that were evacuated, but also the communities that were left here and were shot also. So this is one thing. The other thing is the IDF is already in a long fight for 14 months in the south and in the north, and the reserves are very, very tired. And I think also for the IDF, this agreement is very, very important. Now, let us not forget that this is not a peace agreement. This is just a type of ceasefire, like the ceasefire in 2006, that maintained 16 or 18 years. And we need to see what will happen in the next 60 days. Mm-hmm. But the idea, as I see it, that the state of Israel should use the time that we have now for two main things. Mm-hmm. First of them is to bring back the population of the north back home. It will take time. Not everyone will come in the next weeks. It will take a year, even more, to bring them back.
And
the second thing,
I want to just ask you on that point. Sorry to interrupt, but what do you feel is necessary to restore the security and bring residents back to the north? I mean, what do you think it will take? Because there are still tens of thousands of people who are displaced from the northern communities.
To restore the targets that we put when we went out to this war in the north was, first of all, to bring security to the population here in the north. The second one was to prevent the ability of the Radwan force to raid into Israel, into the Galil. And the third one was to prevent and eliminate the ability of Hezbollah to shoot short-range anti-tanks missiles and shooting and snipers directly into the houses of the kibbutzim and moshavim in the border. So the two targets, the two military targets, have been accomplished. Now is up to the leadership of the Galil and to the leadership of the IDF and the leadership of the State of Israel to bring back the people to the Galil. It's not only the security. There is security now. What we need now is much more than security. We need now to develop, to build up again the Galil from zero. The Galil went back 30 years back during this war. People lost their work, investors went away, the children are not studying in their schools, people are not living at their homes. So everything should be built up again. This is the main target now that we need to deal with it. The IDF will know how to maintain the security in the border.
All right, well, Lieutenant Colonel in the reserves, Gidi Harari, let us hope that the North can be rehabilitated and security restored. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much.
And as the ceasefire went into effect in the north, Hamas now finds itself alone in the war with Israel in Gaza. Now that Hezbollah has laid down its arms, they too might be ready for a ceasefire. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
With the ceasefire in place in the north, Israel will focus on the other goals of the multi-front war.
אזרחי ישראל, הבטחתי לכם ניצחון ונשיג ניצחון. נשלים את חיסול החמאס, נשיב את כל חטופינו, נבטיח שעזה לא תהווה עוד איום על ישראל, ונחזיר את תושבי הצפון בבטחה לבתיהם. המלחמה לא תסתיים עד שנשיג את כל יעדיה, ובכלל זה עד שלא נשיב את תושבי הצפון בבטחה הביתה.
After Hezbollah laid down its arms, Hamas announced that it was ready for a ceasefire in Gaza. Hamas said it informed mediators in Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey that it's serious about a deal that would exchange Israeli hostages for Palestinian security prisoners. Hamas is no longer demanding an end to the war. An Egyptian security delegation is due in Israel today for talks on potentially advancing a deal, and Turkey has reportedly been approached and asked to help mediate as well. Qatar recently announced its withdrawal from the mediation role after failing to reach a deal since the pause of November 2023, when 50 Israeli hostages were freed. Israeli and Egyptian officials will reportedly also discuss day-after proposals for Gaza, including the management of Gaza without Hamas.
And the families of Jared and Joshua Kushner announced a $2 million pledge to the Chabad of the United Arab Emirates on Monday in memory of Rabbi Tzvi Kogan, a 28-year-old Israeli Moldovan Chabad emissary who was tragically killed in Dubai last week. Jared Kushner announced his $1 million donation just hours after Kogan's funeral in Kfar Chabad. He made the donation with his wife, Ivanka Trump. Joshua Kushner and his wife, Carly Kloss, then matched the amount. The donation follows widespread condemnation of the killing. Israeli officials have called it a heinous anti-Semitic terrorist act, while UAE ambassador to Washington, Youssef Al-Otaiba, described it as an attack on our homeland values and vision. Jared Kushner, a key negotiator of the Abraham Accords, highlighted the importance of interfaith collaboration and urged others to support Jewish communities in the UAE. In a message on X, he called on people of all faiths to continue Rabbi Kogan's legacy, fostering tolerance and mutual understanding in the region. A beautiful gesture from the Kushners. And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with lows of around 11 degrees Celsius or 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll continue to see cloudy skies with highs of about 19 degrees Celsius or 66 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gravelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.